Okay, the cleaners are going to come soon, so maybe I can finish this before they come and bother me. Well, actually, they do a good job, so I should be grateful. But nonetheless, the part two of this book is the nature of nature-based solutions. So, looking at this, basically, you want to be sure that the urban ecosystem does actually amount to a nature-based solution and not some artificial cluster of species that don't add up to resilience in the big picture. So the painting again is a nice one, pleasing to the eye, greenery, big bird living there with a lot of wildlife, people doing again urban gardening here, carrot is being pulled out here by this lady, massive butterfly flying around here, and there is some other kind of animal here. There's a woman enjoying the big bird and the small bird. There is urban extreme events being shown, how nicely that runoff is managed into this wetland, let's say, or the stream flow. We talked about bioswales, permeable pavers, rain gardens, and so on, that can be used for urban resilience to extreme events like heavy rainfall. Of course, there are heat waves as well. So looking at generally making sure urban ecological resilience is actually provided by the ecosystem based or nature based solution. This is multiple nature based solutions here shown as specific ecosystem services, which is a terminology that that ecosystems are there not just to look pretty and make it cooler, but they have lots of ecosystem services. The definitions here include things like air pollution removal, food production, coastal flood protection, so storm surge protection, recreation, of course, stormwater absorption that I mentioned, urban heat island reduction, and carbon storage. So we looked already at ecology, technology, and ecological, technological, and social. So we are looking at that again with few more details. So these illustrate how different and interacting sets dimensions affect the production and supply of each ecosystem service, and often do so with proportional inputs. So sets is basically social, ecological, and technological dimensions. Okay, that's a cute way to think about it. The left point represents 100% S, so social here. Apex is 100% ecological, and here 100% technological. Obviously they have interactions and feedbacks within them, and gradations between them represent gradients of social, ecological, and technical. So if you're in this corner, you're 100% social, 100% ecological, and here, or ecosystem, and here you are 100% technological. Okay, technology. Okay, so you can look at this as a schematic, but you need enough of social and technical and ecosystem services to create recreational space, and then food production moves in this direction, and you have urban heat island reduction is a combination of more ecology and technology, and in the middle you have some food production on this side, but this is coastal flood protection and so on. So just think about these interactions and don't take these gradations so seriously, because specific location, specific implementation, and local climate will decide which one is more important. Like you may not have stormwater absorption if you're in a very dry city like Phoenix, even though Phoenix does get some heavy rains and floods sometime. Okay, filled shapes illustrate hypothetical contributions of social, ecological, and technological dimensions that affect each service: food production, urban heat island reduction, urban heat island reduction, stormwater absorption, carbon storage, recreation, as discussed in the text of this chapter that I'm not going into. The relative location along the S, E, and T axes represent potential hypotheses to be tested within and among different cities and urban contexts, as sets dimensions, interactions, and proportional contributions may be similar in some cities and very different in other cities. So these are just kind of schematics. Here we ask how we can assess the resilience of E in order to better understand the E dimension of NBS in sets. So you want the ecological resilience to be one of the major metric to be tracked, evaluated, monitored, and so on, with social and technologies being synergistically interacting to maintain, all the biodiversity and ecology that we are indicating in this nice painting. So in terms of the response and effect traits that may change delta in value through their interactions, so we are again looking at various scales. So global sets, specified disturbances, let's say for future scenarios you would put these through climate change scenarios from IPCC or so. Then you will look at regional sets, so this is again social, ecological, technological solutions. So this is city sets and local sets, and then you have specified community resilience as a goal that you're trying to accomplish. So you're going from global context of the climate change, you are getting how it affects regional sets and how it has to come down to city and local. So you are looking at response traits and effects in terms of robustness, resistance, recovery, and reorganization. And you have SP2 resilience, SP3 resilience, functional group 1, 2, and 3, and so on. So arrows between species indicate species interactions that may affect trait expression, and arrows between functional groups indicate interactions between functional groups that may affect trait expressions and resilience at population, community, and ecosystem scales. So ecosystems are made up of a number of species and that they interact with each other. Species move, ecosystems do not move. So we talked about this elsewhere before in terms of mobile generalists and sedentary specialists. So some species are very well set with environmental conditions in which they thrive. If the conditions change beyond their range, like temperature warming or rainfall changes, then they just disappear, whereas some can migrate with the temperatures and rainfall and so on and so forth. Functional groups are kind of ecosystem components that are related through their photosynthetic kind of function or dependence on nutrients, which limitation they face, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's again kind of general but gives you a sense. Conceptual framework for assessing urban ecological resilience. In this sense, we provide the urban ecological resilience conceptual framework to serve as a starting point for thinking through the multiple interacting components and dimensions of urban sets that may affect the resilience of any particular population or community to a disturbance, and to assess urban ecological resilience. So sets, again, remember, social, ecological, and technological solutions. And obviously the perturbations, or what we call here disturbance, can come from remote forcings. Middle East warming may be causing Arabian Sea warming, which may be causing more heat waves and extreme rainfall, or Northwest India and Pakistan. So you have to worry about adaptation and ecosystems in this context of imposed external disturbances that you cannot do much about other than to do your best to adapt and develop nature-based solutions. In the framework, we situate species and their traits in an ecological community context with other species and their traits that exist and interact dynamically within a given local set. This local set is itself nested within the larger city, regional, and global sets that may create disturbances that act through local communities or specifically on individual species depending on type, intensity, duration of a given disturbance. So that's good to remember because the heat waves in duration, intensity and frequency are changing, generally increasing. Rainfall distributions are changing in duration, intensity and frequency, and ecology integrates these things to express itself as perturbations in type, intensity and duration of response to the disturbance. Such that all scales interact and also serve as sources for other social, ecological and technological or combined set impacts that may affect the phenotypic expression of a given species trait, bundle of traits within a species, or impacts on other species and their traits in the ecological community. Technical expression word there, phenotypical. So if you know already phenotypical and genotypical, when environmental forcings change, plant responses can produce things that look different, same species. So that's a phenotypic response where the species has the genetic ability to respond to environmental perturbations, disturbances. So it's not changing its genetic type, it's just a phenotypical response, genetic expression in response to environment changes. Whereas a genotype is when there is a different type of species that will evolve with genetic changes. Okay, so some books make difference between adaptation and adaptation, but I won't get into the details here. Individual trait expressions can in turn affect the expression of other species traits that may confer or not more or less resilience, as described by the 4 R's: robustness, recovery, resistance, and response, and reorganizations that we talked about here. So robustness, resistance, recovery and reorganization. So resistance and response is one. Building on previous functional diversity research, so I screwed that up. Individual traits confer or not more or less resilience, as described by the 4 R's, building on previous functional diversity research and traits framework, but here applied to urban context and resilience. Okay, so I have a few more things to read before moving to part 3. So what is this one trying to do here? I'm just trying to be careful for you in terms of what the art corresponds to. So nature-based solutions and biodiversity, synergies, trade-offs and ways forward. So again, similar context, but now you have more exotic species here in terms of birds and primates and ecosystem, and humans enjoying again their walkways, their rain gardens, their biodiversity, and reducing urban heat island, also implied here some rooftop gardens and so on and so forth. So basically making sure that biodiversity and nature-based solutions in the urban environment are integrated holistically together. So this is the information matrix detailing the different aspects of biodiversity from which practitioners may draw in decision making. Many words here, I won't read all of them, but here you are going from individual to community level in terms of types of diversity, and you're going from genetic and taxonomic to functional, phylogenetic and habitats. And in this vertical axis you are going from research, design, practice and case studies. Let's see, we read 1. Genetic diversity increases conditions in which survival and reproduction is possible. So this is kind of a meta-analysis with references provided for each box. Diversify source populations and local propagation from natural populations. In terms of design for genetic aspects of biodiversity. For practice, sapling or clone provenance must be known and horticultural suppliers approved by municipality, just to make sure that you are not doing crazy things in terms of sapling and clone provenance. And case studies here, example from this paper: less disease in and thinnest trees with high genetic diversity compared to low diversity stock in Pittsburgh, USA. Okay. In terms of habitats, I'll jump here. Habitat complementarity promotes biodiversity by minimizing overlap in resource and competition when you think about the research result. In terms of design, preserve remnant habitat and use as template for nature-based solutions. Consider the context specificity, and NBS solutions will be different. Okay, so everything is location specific, species specific, climate specific, and so on. So in practice, guidelines for conserving sensitive habitat and integration of NBS must align with its preservation, which is kind of what is implied in this kind of art. And in terms of a case study, Toronto ravines bisect city and cross many different conditions that must frame adjacent NBS design. So that's from the city of Toronto. So ways forward in supporting biodiversity and nature-based solutions in cities. In this chapter, we highlight the value of biodiversity for nature-based solutions and the value of NBS for biodiversity. In summary, biodiversity supports ecosystem stability, resilience, and multifunctionality. For single services and over short time scales, single species can do the job, but for the provision of multiple services, multifunctional NBS and over long time periods, biodiversity is indispensable for the stability, resilience, and thus also to the productivity and efficiency of NBS. So ecosystems are generally thought of in terms of their health, which means complexity, productivity, and resilience. That's what this is saying as well. Okay, so you are tracking some metrics of overall health of the ecosystem, because biodiversity is a very intuitively good word, but defining biodiversity is not so easy. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. NBS success results from local knowledge about setting and species. So local environmental knowledge, LEK, is always very important. Not every species or species mixture is suitable for every city, climate, or biogeographic region. This is very important to understand. Of course, keeping in mind that as climate changes rapidly, what is suitable now may not be suitable in few years or 10 years or whatever, right? Biodiversity has many aspects, but for NBS design, those aspects that are well studied and are best manageable, such as species richness, abundance, and traits, should be selected by practitioners. Kind of details that I'm jumping over, but you should go read the details if you are interested. So far, unexplored biodiversity, ecological social relationships across ecosystem service relationships across all aspects of biodiversity, genetic, taxonomic, functional, and phylogenetic habitat require research attention. Okay, so I don't know if I'm talking too fast, but hopefully you can listen multiple times if necessary to understand the main, most salient points I'm making, the saliency being decided entirely by me subjectively. So definitely go back to the book if you want more details. So I did manage to finish before the knock from the cleaners, which will come in a few minutes, but part 3 is on the multiple benefits of nature-based solutions, and we'll start with just nature-based solutions as critical urban infrastructure for cooling and cleaning airsheds. As we said before, urban heat island, pollution, and dealing with extreme events are big problems for urban airshed and watershed, and we'll look at some of those things in the next section of the book. Okay.